Hey, my name's Calvin with Tropical American Timber, and today I'm going to show you how to refinish or restore or do a second coat on Rubio Monocoat wood finish. So this piece is a new commission piece that I am applying a second coat to because the first coat looks great, but it's a little dull, a little matte, and adding a second coat really ups the sheen in a very nice way, and it doesn't do any harm to the durability. So to start, we're going to make sure it's cleaned off with anything loose, which I've already done using an air compressor. And we're going to scuff the surface using a 3M non-woven maroon pad, which is very much like a Scotch-Brite. And I'm going to go back and forth and just scuff up that top surface. It's not really going to sand per se. It's not getting through to wood. Just scuffing the finish. So that's the top. Now for the sides. For any sections that are either difficult to access with the sander, and for live edge, like I have a little section here that has a natural sapwood edge. I use this little cutoff pad of the same maroon Scotch-Brite. Also, I want to point out that I have this on a foam topped work table, but it's also sitting about half an inch, 3/4 of an inch off that, elevated on little foam blocks. So what that allows me to do is wipe off excess that drips underneath. So now that we've done that, I will quickly vacuum the dust. So much of the dust we created did get pulled up by the vacuum hose that's attached to my sander. I do strongly recommend that because it keeps things clean, it keeps the sanding pad cool, and it also reduces the amount of cleanup you have to do. So you can use water as part of your cleanup process. I found that it isn't necessary. I do not notice any difference between cleanup with and without water. So now I'm just wiping off anything that's left on the surface with a dry paper towel. Also, I'll point out, if you're going to use a vacuum, do not use like a stiff plastic vacuum attachment, because if you touch the surface, it'll like scuff it and leave like a shiny spot, like a fingernail scratch kind of. So I was using a vacuum attachment with like very soft nylon bristles that are clean. They don't get anything on them but wood dust. So lastly, with almost all the dust taken off, I'm going to give it a little blast with air. Again, you don't want to touch this to the wood because it will leave like sort of a shiny fingernail mark. I didn't notice any difference there, so I already got 99% of it up. And with that, I'm going to apply Rubio, which I had already mixed, and I mixed 2 ounces here to cover this piece, which is about almost 6 feet by 3.5 feet. Where can I put this? It uses, finishing with Rubio, it uses very little material for the second coat because it doesn't really soak in very deeply. You know, if you did a great job on the first coat, it won't really soak in at all. It just sort of sits on top and adds gloss and a little extra protection. I use a little plastic spreader. Make sure it's clean. It doesn't have, like, you know, sharp, uneven edges that could nick the existing finished surface. Little goes a long way, as you can see. How much do I have left here? I've got maybe 3/4 of an ounce left. So once I've gotten, you know, the lion's share of that top coated, I try to avoid getting too much dripping around to the sides and ends. Because I do that using a white non-woven pad. I mentioned 3M makes these non-woven pads. If you can find them by 3M, I would recommend using the genuine 3M product because they just have really great quality in general for all their products. I use their sandpapers as well as their non-woven pads. But yeah, so the white is not, it has no grit to it. It's just like a polishing pad. And what I'm doing is kind of mopping up the pools that are on top, spreading it to the edges, and then coming around and getting the sides. There wasn't quite enough excess on the top there to get me all the way here, so I'm gonna add a little bit, let that soak in. Get this little live edge patch. I'm gonna go back over. Oftentimes I'm sort of like in the light right now, in the doorway, but oftentimes in this stage where I'm doing the sides, I will throw on a headlamp, even if it's the middle of the day and I've got, you know, pretty good overhead lights here, because I don't want to miss a spot. A little dry spot will really stand out, and after I finish filming, I'm going to go back and I'm going to double check this end because it is backlit with the sunlight. This is Monkeypod, by the way, a darker example of a Monkeypod slab from Costa Rica that we stock here at Tropical American Timber. And the reason I'm making this video in large part is to show you how I do this, because each species of wood you finish is a little different. And the recommendations from Rubio in Belgium, I have found that they're not entirely accurate or helpful for finishing the specific species I work with. They are helpful. It's not like I think it's bad advice, but this process works for me quite well. So I've gone through and checked everything. One of the things they say is to let it sit 15 minutes. I found that in my shop, that usually is excessive, and it will start to really thicken and become difficult to remove. So after a few minutes, maybe 5, 3, it's also less critical on the second coat, considerably less critical how long you let it sit. You start removing all the excess. I start with just paper towels. You can use a cotton terry cloth or anything, you know, that's what's it called? Lint free. But I start with paper towels because they're cheap, and I start with the Rubio I applied first, and then transition to the sections that got covered later. Don't put this in the trash. Put it either out by itself on some concrete or in a bucket of water, because oil finishes, they're actually exothermic, so they heat up as they cure, and with enough finish and enough heat in a confined space, they can actually catch fire or cause other materials in your trash can to catch fire. So be careful with that. You cannot remove too much excess Rubio, so there's really no harm in just keeping on going until your rag comes up dry. But after I've gotten just about everything I can, I will switch from removing excess. I'm just getting that anything that might have dripped. Looks like I got it. Yep, all clean. Now I'm going to switch from removing excess to buffing. This is when my gloves come off. I'm done with those. So that is the same material that I used to do the ends and the sides. White non-woven pad, non-abrasive, just for polishing. Here goes. So you can see how little Rubio is left on there. This is a new side, and this is the used side. So I had gotten almost everything off of it before I started that. Make sure to keep your vacuum hose off the work. You may have noticed that it was kind of tricky to get this section with the buffing pad. On the end grain, I've noticed that it makes little or no difference at all, really, whether or not you polish it, as long as you've got all the excess off really thoroughly. And you can also kind of hand polish it just with a little square of paper towel. If you have any questions, feel free to call Tropical American Timber. We're in Gainesville, Florida, and selling these slabs and making finished pieces is what we do. Have a good one. Here's the piece up close, and I wanted to add that if, you know, over time you want to check back on it, maybe over an hour or two for the second coat, and if you start to see any dry spots in the light, you can go back with the take the fresh side of the white non-woven pad on your sander with the vacuum and buff out the whole thing again. If there's any dry spots or any little beads that pop up on the surface, if they soaked in and they squeeze out, definitely keep an eye on it for about an hour or two for the second coat. The first coat, you have to keep an eye on it for a little longer. All right, good luck.